We're learning the second Sikha on Parshas Pekudei in Chelek Chavav on page 280. In this week's Parsha, in the beginning of the Parsha, it speaks about the calculation of the gold, silver, and copper that were donated to the Mishkan. And then the Pasuk goes on to tell us what the silver and copper was used for. But with the gold, the Pasuk does not specify the calculation, what was done with the gold. So the Rabbi here will bring from the Kli Yakar that addresses this question. In den Tam for was me gefind in der Teire by Meleches und Binyan Mishkan. The reason for this that we find here in the Parsha, when it speaks about the work and the building of the Mishkan, as Moshe Rabbeinu hat gegeben a cheshbon, was mod gemacht von dem Kesef von Achoshes, von Nidvas Mishkan, that Moshe Rabbeinu gives an account what the silver and copper was used for in building the Mishkan, aber nit was mod gemacht von dem Zav. However, there is no account in the Pasuk that tells us what was built from the gold. Zok the Kli Yakar, so the Kli Yakar explains. As Vinar mod verendigt alle malachas Mishkan bechlal und befrat. As soon as it was completed, the work of the Mishkan, whether generally or specifically, und als was mod gedarft machen von Kesef und Achoshes, and everything that had to be built from the silver and copper was done, is Pekudei lahoitzi es atzmai min hachashad. So in order to remove any suspicions regarding how Moshe Rabbeinu is using these materials of silver and copper, hat Moshe noch eider hat gemacht die Pekudei kohune en welches es gewen zahav gewollt geben a cheshbon von dem Kesef von Achoshes. So at that point, even before they finished using the gold for everything that was needed, which includes also the Pekudei kohune, the garments for the kayin that had gold in it. So even before that was done, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to give a clear account of what was done with the silver and copper. Hat nit gewollt warten mit dem cheshbon. He didn't want to wait with giving this account until he'll be able to say and give the account what was done with the gold as well. And that would be bis mevet machen the Pekudei kohune until they will complete and make the garments for the kayin as well. Und erst dann geben dem cheshbon von dem Zav zusammen mit the Kesef von Achoshes. And only then would it be possible to give the account of the gold together with the silver and copper as well. But rather, Moshe Rabbeinu immediately wanted to give an account so there should be no suspicions about what happened with the materials of silver and copper. Now, und das, was hat nicht gemacht in cheshbon von dem Zahav, takef noch ein gemar asiyas Pekudei kohune. Now, why later, when it was completed, all the gold was used for everything, including for the garments of the kayin, is a mavayer api divrei medrash. So the Kli Yakar goes on to explain this according to what it says in the medrash, that Kishaba Moshe lost his cheshbon al kol davar v'davar, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to give an account for everything that he made. Chasam and mishkal elef ushvameis v'chamisha v'shivim shkalim. It was missing 1,775 shkalim of the silver. V'shachach, and Moshe Rabbeinu forgot, and he didn't know what it is that he did with this amount of silver. Yotza baska v'omra, so a heavenly voice came out and announced, V'esa elef ushva hameyes v'chamisha v'shivim, that these 1,775 silver, shkalim of silver, asa vavim la'amudim. They were used to make the hooks for the pillars that was used in the courtyard of the Mishkan. L'kayim mashanemar, this is to fulfill what the Pasuk says about Moshe Rabbeinu, Loi kain avdi Moshe b'chol beisi nemanu, that Moshe Rabbeinu is completely trusted, and here as well, the Baskel is announcing that everything was accounted for, including this amount of silver as well. Now, after this Paskel came out, there was no need anymore for Moshe Rabbeinu to give the calculation of what was done with the gold, as the Rebbe explains. So this haste, what this means is, falpi. As das was the Baskel at Eides gesagt v'se elef geimer. The fact that the Baskel gave testimony that Moshe Rabbeinu is to be trusted is given wegen Kesef. But this Baskel was just about this amount of silver, nit zahav, but it didn't announce about the gold. So seemingly you may think that it would still be necessary to give an account what was done with the gold. But as Yidden haben gesehen, as min hashamayim is made of Moshe, since the Yidden already saw that from heaven, they are testifying about Moshe Rabbeinu's trust. So it wasn't necessary anymore to give an account of what was done with the gold. So this is the point here that the Kli Yakar says that Moshe Rabbeinu did not wait with giving an account for the silver and the copper. And then after that, once a heavenly voice came out to say what happened with this amount of silver, even though he would then later be ready to give an account for the gold when they finished using it to make the big day kahuna, the garments as well, but at that point it wasn't necessary, because the Yidden already heard the heavenly voice about Moshe Rabbeinu's trust. However, der Bior is aber nit glattik. This explanation of the Kli Yakar is not smoothly understood for the following two reasons. Weil, Aleph, number one, die Werte, vesa elef v'shvameis gaimer, these words in the Pasuk that the Medrash says is the Baskel announcing what happened with this silver, with this shkolim of elef and shvameis, was the Baskel hat jetzt gesagt, wegen dem Cheshbon von Kesef, steht in Pasuk lifnei dem Cheshbon von der Choshes. This is written in the pasuk before the calculation is given regarding the copper. What was done with the copper? If so, is kishem vi Moshe at nachem baskel nit gedav geb ma cheshbon von dem zahav. Just like after this heavenly voice is saying what happened to the silver, and now Moshe Rabbeinu has the full trust of Klal Yisrael, so it's not necessary to give an account for the gold. Azay at reich nit gedav geb dem cheshbon von der choshes. So it's not necessary to give an account for the copper either. So why is this an explanation that Moshe Rabbeinu does not have to give an account for gold, but still for copper, yes? Why? Beis, another question here is, either way, Oibs is given a baskel, as Moshe Nemanu, if the heavenly voice is notifying that everybody could see and hear that Moshe Rabbeinu was trusted, Favas ist das given in an oifen Zman, as es auf Versparen, zu geben a Cheshbon nor von himself. So why did this baskel come out only in a time that would then cause that he wouldn't have to give any account for the gold? Und nit bisman kazeh, as es soll im Ganzen nicht davon geben kein Cheshbon. That the baskel could have been earlier, that he shouldn't have to give any account at all. Euch nit from the kesef or nochayshes, not from the silver and copper either. Shari klap bishmaya galye as mevet choyshed zayin. It's revealed to Hashem that there is room for suspicion, and they may suspect him, and therefore the heavenly voice that was going to come out anyways could be earlier, so it wouldn't be necessary to give any account at all. Okay, so now to explain this, the Rebbe is going to introduce here a new concept regarding this cheshbon, the calculation, the account that Moshe Rabbeinu gives. So it could be said, as Pekudei Mishkan, Asher Pukad al Pi Moshe, the account that Moshe Rabbeinu gives of all the details of what was done with the Zav, Kesef, and the Choshes. Actually, regarding Zav, it does not say what was done with it, but it says the amount of gold that was donated. And then with the Kesef and the Choshes, the Pasuk also says what was done with it, is Nitzdan Geb Ma Cheshbon. It's not just simply to give us the numbers and the calculation of everything that happened. This is relevant for the very essence of what the Mishkan is all about. To explain this, so we need to introduce the following. So here, seemingly, there's a question. Why, after the first pasuk quoted, Ele Pekudei Mishkan Asher Pukad al Pi Moshe, does the pasuk repeat again that it will be Betzalel, Ben Uri, Ben Chur, Lemate Yehuda, also as Kol Shetziv Hashem es Moshe, and the Itoy Aholiyav Ben Achisamach Lemate Don Chodesh V'Choshev V'Gaimer. That the ones that built the Mishkan was Betzalel and Aholiyav along with him. We know this already from before. It says already earlier in Parshas Kisisa and again in Parshas Vayakel that they are the ones that built the Mishkan. So why is it repeating it again over here? Now, late Medrash Razal, according to what it says in the Medrash, and Rashi brings this as well. Kommt die Teire da, lassen wissen. Here the Teire is notifying us a new thing about them. As Oster, Es Hashatziva Hashem es Moshe, the pasuk says specifically that they built and made what Hashem commanded Moshe, and therefore, as Rashi here says, Hashatziva Oisei Moshe Ein Ksiv Kan. It doesn't say in the pasuk here that they did as Moshe Rabbeinu commanded them. Ela kol Hashatziva Hashem es Moshe. Rather, they built and did what Hashem told Moshe. Which means afilu dvarim shalei amalei Moshe Rabbi his schema daite lemashenema b'Moshe misinai. Even things that he didn't hear directly from Moshe, but he understood and knew what it is Hashem's will and what Hashem told Moshe, and that's how he built the Mishkan. That's what the pasuk here is saying when it's telling us about the fact that Betzalel and Eliyav built the Mishkan. However, this still requires an additional explanation why the pasuk repeats here, specifically Betzalel and Eliyav. Was steht das zwischen dem pasuk Ele Pekudei Mishkan Gomer, Asher Pukad al Pi Moshe, und dem Cheshbon Kol Hazav Gomer v'Kesef Pekudei Aida? Why this detail? Why is it mentioned right here, in between the opening pasuk of the parsha, where it says that this is the account of the materials that were brought to Moshe, and then afterwards it goes on to say the details about the gold, silver, and copper. Right in between this pasuk, where it mentions Betzalel and Eliyav being the ones that built the Mishkan. Es hat gedacht stehen, oder früher beseif Parshas Vayakel, or it should say their name and this detail about the fact that they did what Hashem told Moshe at the end of Parshas Vayakel, oder nach die Psukim, wo es wird gegeben der Cheshbon von dem Zav, Kesef und Cheshes, or later, after the pasuk completes giving the full account of what happened with the gold, silver, and copper. Why is it right here, after the opening pasuk of Ele Pekudei, this is the account, and then identifying Betzalel and Eliyav, the ones that built, and then continuing with what the account is for the gold, silver, and copper. So the explanation for this could be said as follows. The Mishkan hat gedacht sein Shaykh zu Klal Yisrael. So the first point here is that the Mishkan had to be owned by the entire Klal Yisrael. The Mishkan is referred to in the beginning of this week's Parsha, Mishkan ha'edos, the Mishkan which is testimony. What is the Eidos here? Eidos li Yisrael shevitel lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu al Maisa ha'egel. This is testimony for all Yidden that Hashem overlooked or forgave on the Maisa Egel, the sin with the golden calf. Shaharei hishra shchinase b'neim, because Hashem now is bringing the Shechina to dwell amongst Yidden. Und in Idavis von all Yud Gimel Tezvav Dvarim, the donations of the 13 or 15 items that were brought, hat me gedarft auf weggeben beäufen, als es sollen ganzen Belangen zum Zibur, nicht bleiben scheich zu Ayochid. The donation had to be complete, totally dedicated and given, that it now belongs to the public, to everybody, to Klal Yisrael, and not that it still belongs to any individual. Und das ist geworden durch den, was man alles gebracht zu Moshe Rabbeinu. This was accomplished by the fact that they brought all the materials to Moshe Rabbeinu. Was is given der Nasi, Kol Yisrael, he is the leader of all Yidden. By Deizeh is die ganze Trumme, was Yidden haben gebracht, geworden Nichse Tzibur. And by donating and giving to Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of all Yidden, he took it and through him, he acquired it that it should become the property of the entire Yidden, of the entire congregation. Rabbi Moshe hat abgegeben die Nidweis am Mishkan zu Betzalel Eliyav kol ish chacham leiv auf zu tun mit den Nidweis die alle Malachas am Mishkan. However, now after Moshe Rabbeinu took all these materials, all the donations, and he gave it to Betzalel and Eliyav and the other wise men in order to do the work to build the Mishkan with all of this. Now, befrat, and especially in Tim Tzeleimar, if we'll say, as haben nit genommen kischar for their arbeit, that they got no pay at all for their work. Haben sie durch sehr Asiye bekommen am en bailos of the Malachas HaMishkan. So the workers, Betzalel and Eliyav and the other ones along with them, got somewhat of a level of acquisition in the work that they did with these materials. Vibalt as Shem or Omnin ala Malacha. The name of a craftsman is on the work that he does. When he takes the raw materials and he turns it into a piece of furniture, or in this case into the vessels for the Mishkan, so his name is there in the work that he does, and therefore he acquires a certain aspect or somewhat of a level of ownership. In the footnotes here you have the sources for this concept, but this is what happens when Betzalel and the ones along with him are doing the work. Although it did not completely leave the ownership of all Yidden, but to some degree their ownership is minimized by this, that the name of these individuals, Betzalel, Eliyav, is now on the work that they did. So it's for this reason that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving the calculation for all the details of everything that was built from the Mishkan. Nachdem wie Betzalel v'chulu hat verendigt die Melechas HaMishkan. After Betzalel completes the work of the Mishkan, hat gedarf sein a pe'ula, the Pekudei Ominyan, durch Moshe Rabbeinu. There had to be something that was done here, and it's the count and the calculation of that Moshe Rabbeinu is doing here with all the details of what was built, in die alle Malachas HaMishkan, as es sollen in ganzen sein Nichsei HaMishkan. That through this, he accomplished that it should all be the possessions of the Mishkan, velech is eidos li Yisrael, Klal Yisrael. And as such, as being part of what's included in the count of the work for the Mishkan, it's part of the Mishkan, which is a testimony for Yidden belonging to all of Klal Yisrael. Damit hat man sie herausgenommen von der Scheiches, was hat sich geschaffen durch die Asiyas Betzal V'Aliyah V'Chol Chachmei Leiv zu werden legamri Nichsei Tzipor. So the main point of this account was to take any aspect of ownership that would be in these kalim that were built by these Chachmei Leiv, that it should not be on their name at all, but rather it's on the name of Klal Yisrael. It's a Mishkan, Ha'edus, a testimony for Yidden, and it belongs completely to them. That's the point of this account. Not just simply to remove any suspicion, to give a proper account of what happened, but rather to give the proper ownership and identity of the Mishkan that it belongs to Klal Yisrael. Another point here is, nit nar zer kiddush als nichse hektish bechlal. Had gedacht sein durch Moshe Rabbeinu, not only to sanctify all of the money and the materials, had to be done through Moshe Rabbeinu, that it should belong to Klal Yisrael, nor euch der inye meyuchad, zu lieb welche jede prat is gemacht geworden, hat gedacht sein durch Moshe Rabbeinu. But each detail, every individual vessel, and every individual part of the Mishkan that was made, had to be through Moshe Rabbeinu. Und das hat sich aufgetan durch der Pekudei al pi Moshe la'acharei avidasim shel betzalel v'chulu. And this could only be accomplished after all the work is done. In the beginning, Moshe Rabbeinu receives all of the raw materials, and then everything in general sense, before it's made into any specific section or keli for the Mishkan, everything is being donated to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he, as the leader of Klal Yisrael, is taking it and acquiring it for Klal Yisrael. But then, each individual vessel, once it's made, now has to be taken in account for to make it belong to each individual, to all of the Yidden. Each individual keli belongs to all of Yidden. That's the additional point now of counting at this point. Und der Rebbe ist die Teure mafsik und sagt gleich noch ein Posik. Eile Pekudei Mishkan Goymer, asher pukad al pi Moshe, die zwei Psukim u betzal Goymer, vi itoi ahali of Goymer. This is the reason why, right after it begins with Eile Pekudei Mishkan, the Torah brings these two Psukim that names the ones, the craftsmen that did the work, Betzalel and Eliyav. Eider, sie redt wegen der Cheshbon von Kol Hazav Goymer und der Cheshbon von Kesef und Cheshes v'chulu. Before it continues to give the details of the account of the gold and the silver and the copper. Damit is Musber, der Teichen und der Tzorech von der Pekudei al pi Moshe. It's this that is explaining why it's necessary for Moshe Rabbeinu to give this account. That since the raw materials are brought to him, and then he had along with him these craftsmen that are doing the actual work, so in order to bring it back into the full possession and ownership of Klal Yisrael, this is accomplished by Moshe Rabbeinu sort of repossessing by taking a full account of everything that's here for the sake of Klal Yisrael. Okay, so now this will explain why this is only for the silver and copper of which they built the kalim, the vessels for the Mishkan, but it does not include the gold which they used also to make the Pekudei Kohana, the garments. This is all true regarding the work for the Mishkan, that it has to be taken into account for all the details in order that it should belong completely to Klal Yisrael. However, when it comes to the garments for the Kohanim, so what we find is, as gleich b'shas hatzivu leMoshe wegen the Pekudei Kohana, immediately when Hashem commands Moshe about making these garments, it says va'ata hakrev elecha zokt Rashi la'acharei shetigmar melechas hamishkan. After you complete all the work of the Mishkan, then you bring them to take the materials and to make the garments. So what we see here in the pasuk is the Pekudei Kohana va'asiyasan. So the garments for the Kohen and the making of these garments was durch Pekudei Kohana vert elakatshe lekaneli von Aaron ubanov. This is what sanctifies the Aaron and his children in order for them to be Kohanim. Is nit be'emtza or the bechlal from melechas hamishkan. It's not in middle, during, or part of the work of the Mishkan. Zeir asiyah dav zayin dafke la'achar shetigmar melechas hamishkan. They are made only after the work of the Mishkan is done. That's what it says right at the beginning when Hashem commands to make these garments. So we can explain what's the point about this. The chalois hakedusha from the Kanili b'Mishkan, this entire concept that there should be a level of holiness for the Kainim that are going to serve in the Mishkan, Ken zayin nar, wenn es da the Mitzias von an Ort, wo es ken zayin v'shachanti. This is only relevant or only possible if there is a place where there can be the dwelling of the Shechina. Or b'meila vet afshari is hamitzias von the Kanili. And then as a result, you have the possibility to have a Kayin that's going to come and serve for me, meaning in the place where the Shechina is. From Kohona, l'sheidas, Kohona means to serve. Only then could they be sanctified and they could enter into this level of being a kayin to serve with these garments. If you don't yet have the existence of this place to serve, is nidad inyan fun sug kayin kedushas kayin the mishkan. So you don't have the entire concept of a kayin, which means to serve in relation to the mishkan. A kayin means the servant, the one that's serving in the mishkan. If there's no entity of an existence of a mishkan, there's no concept of a kayin. And the garments which are there to bring them to this status of being a kayin is not relevant at all, does not exist yet at all. So similar is the same applies regarding the making of these garments. Mitzias asiyas bigdei kohone is la'achre v'sizdar gemar meleches mitzias hamishkan. The whole talk about the command to go ahead and make these begadim, the bigdei kohone, is only after the work for the mishkan exists and it's done. So now, based on this, weil Pizeh Yuvon, was es hat nicht gedarft sein, Pukad, euch benegei dem Chelek Hazov, was von ihm hat man gemacht, the Bigdei Kohane. So this explains why Moshe Rabbeinu was not giving the account for the gold, which includes the gold that was also used for the garments of the Kayin. So the reason is, going back to the point explained before, that Teich enu Peulas Pekudei Mishkan is Kehemshech HaKosov, el is Mishkan HaEdus. The reason why the account had to be given for all the details that was built for the Mishkan is, as the Pasuk says, this is a Mishkan which serves as a testimony. Kanal, as quoted before, Eidus li Yisrael, Shevitu lev HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Egel Sharei Hisha Shechinasa B'neihem. This is a testimony that Hashem forgave Yidden for the Egel because now the Shechina dwells in the Mishkan. Ubemeiles negeyas melechas hamishkan in welche hishre shchinasai soll sein a hektisch was es in ganzen shayach leklal Yisrael. So here is where it's important that the dwelling of the Shechina will be in a place which has been sanctified completely for all of Yidden. On kein shum shaychas su yechidim, without any connection to any individual shall be Yisrael amongst Yidden. Not even any aspect of connection that you get to the Mishkan by the ones that built the Mishkan, where you say, oh, this keli was built by this craftsman and that one by that craftsman. There should be no connection of no name, of no individual that built anything of the Mishkan. That's why there, regarding the vessels of the Mishkan, it was necessary for Moshe Rabbeinu to give the account to repossess it fully for the sake of Klal Yisrael. By contrast, when it comes to the garments of the Kohanim, as we saw before here, it's not at all a portion of the work of the Mishkan. Rather, after the Mishkan is complete, then there is the Bigdei Kohane for the Kainim to gain their status as being the servants to serve in the Mishkan. So although regarding the Bigdei Kohane, it also has to come from money that belongs to the tzibur, to the entire congregation, and not an individual. However, this additional emphasis here, that there should be no relation to any individual, to any craftsman that created these clothing, that is not necessary here. Because these garments are not part of the actual Mishkan itself that serves as this testimony for the building of the Mishkan. It's the garments that is giving the Kainim their status as being Kainim to serve. And therefore here, it's not necessary to give the account for the gold that includes also what was used to make the Bigdei Kohana. With this, we will understand, and it will be better and well understood, the difference that we find regarding the donations. By Nidvas HaMishkan steht, as man hat es als gebracht zum Moshe. By the donating of everything for the Mishkan, the Pasuk says that it was all brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. Bezalel, Ahaliyav, Kolish Chacham Lev, haben das genommen, belifnei Moshe. And that then they took B'tzal and all the craftsmen that worked along with him took all these materials from in front of Moshe Rabbeinu to go and create and do the work for the Mishkan. However, when it comes to the gold and the blue wool and all the other materials that were used to make the garments for the Kohanim, it was also the donations that were sanctified for the sake of Hashem's name to make these Bigdei Kohona. Zokta with the pasuk vehem yikhus azav. The pasuk, however, does not say that they took this from in front of Moshe. Rather, the B'tzal, Haliyah, and so on, they took the gold and all the donations directly from the Yidden. Oisam chachmei lev sheyasu al begodim. So these wise men, the craftsmen that are making these garments, yikablu min hamisnadvim es azav es atcheles lasas men es habegodim. They received all these donations directly from the Yidden that donated them. It didn't have to go through Moshe Rabbeinu. So based on what we saw before here, this explains the difference. Only regarding the Mishkan is there this extra emphasis that it must be completely belonging to Klal Yisrael with no aspect of a relation to any individual. And therefore it had to all be brought first to Moshe, which is the leader of Klal Yisrael, and then from him to all the Yidden. Or rather to the craftsmen that will build it, and then Moshe Rabbeinu gives the account that it will bring it completely back into the possession of Klal Yisrael. However, when it comes to the materials used to make the Bigdei Kohona, here, these materials, you don't have that extra emphasis, and therefore it's brought directly to the Chachmei Lev that are going to build and make these begotten. Now, based on this, this explains why this is something that was accomplished specifically through Moshe. He is the one that ensures that it should all belong to Klal Yisrael completely. Afalpi was der Inyan from Moshe Litzibur Yafe Bechlal is doch euch wenn man geht up die Zach zu a Gizbar. Even though usually this idea, which is mentioned in the Gemara, that when you donate to Hektish, so you have to donate and give it over completely, that it should belong to the Hektish, to the public, and the individual relinquishes any individual ownership. So this is usually done by a Gizbar, which is the Gabbai or the caretaker of the Hektish. It doesn't specifically have to be Moshe Rabbeinu. But here though, we find that it's Al Pi Moshe specifically. Das ist nicht nur mitzadem inyan anesiyas shel Moshe. It's not only because of what was mentioned before, that Moshe Rabbeinu being the leader of Klal Yisrael is the representative of all Yidden, that it belongs to everybody. Not euch mitzadem was Moshe mitzad atzmai hat it gedacht onkommen zu der kapara shayde mishkan. But the reason is also because Moshe, as far as he himself as an individual is concerned, did not need at all the atonement of the Mishkan personally. Wie gerät schon einmal, as it was once explained, as Moshe is given der einzige, was hat nicht gehad, kein Sheiches chas v'sholem zum Chet Egel. Moshe is the only individual amongst Klal Yisrael that had no relation whatsoever, God forbid, to the sin of the golden calf. Afilin it beifen yesh von yesh biyadi limchis. Not even an indirect connection by the fact that he was here, he was present, that he was able to protest in one way or another. Moshe Rabbeinu was in Shemayim learning Torah with Hashem, and he was not able to protest at all. Und b'meile hat nicht gedacht ankommen zu dem Inyan von Mishkan Eidos li Yisrael shevitel am HaKadosh Baruch Hu amay seigel. So Moshe Rabbeinu for himself does not at all require this atonement of the Eidos, the testimony of the Mishkan that Hashem forgives on the Egel. Und der Ribber, so therefore, alle andere Yidden, when it comes to anyone else amongst Klal Yisrael, mit Zadem, was sie haben gemusst ankommen zum Mishkan lekapare, since they do require the Mishkan for their own atonement, wird durch Zeir is askas basiyas ha-Mishkan, a-shayches von die Dvarim shenasu ayadam mit Zeh, da'isa malacha. So because if you're an individual that requires this kapara for yourself, so if you're doing the work here now in this Mishkan, so this creates a connection to you in this work that you're doing because you require this kapara for yourself. And therefore it will be lacking in it being completely something that is hektish, that belongs totally to the tzibur with no connection to any individual. So if there would be any other individual that would be taking, any gizbar, any gabbai, that would be taking the money of the materials and everything for the Mishkan to then give it for the entire tzibur, but this individual is also in need for himself, for a kapara. In order that all these monies and materials should be for the tzibur completely, even after it's made. Everything is done by individuals. This has to be done specifically through Moshe. Is given durch Moshe Dafke. And not only the donating was all brought to Moshe, and Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that gives the account of all the details that was then built of it, but also the erecting of the Mishkan was done through Moshe Rabbeinu. It was brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, hat alles gebracht zu Moshe, und Dafka al Yodai is aufgestellt geworden der Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that put up the Mishkan because it has to be done only through an individual that has no personal need or interest for the kapara for himself. And that's only possible through Moshe Rabbeinu that had no connection in any way to the Chet of the Egel. Based on this, the Rebbe continues, V'yeshleima noch hatam, for was es ist verbunden mit Moshe Dafke. We can give another reason why this is accomplished and it's connected specifically to Moshe. The Reiftu for Mishkan of the andere Mikdashos is in them was is anitzchi. There's something unique about the Mishkan, even more than the other Bate Mikdash later, that the Mishkan, the existence of the Mishkan and all of its kelim, is something which is eternal. The Gemara sagt, as the Gemara tells us, that Mishanivne Mikdash Rishain, when the first base of Mikdash was built, Nignas Oil Mayit Krashav Krasav Abrichav Amudav Adonov. So all of the parts of the Mishkan were all hidden. They all exist and they're all hidden. The Oil Mayit, the walls, every hook and every single part, and all the beams and the sockets, everything was all hidden away. On the Tam Deruf is, and the reason for this is, Val der Mishkan is Maisi Yedei Moshe. Since this is the work of Moshe Rabbeinu, is Nitshayach as a bottle varen. The work of Moshe Rabbeinu is everlasting. It's impossible for it to be nullified ever. Und der Rebbe hat bechol prat u prat shalo asiyeh gedav zayin de pekida al pi Moshe noch zeir asiyeh. Bichdei es soll sein an inyan nitzchi. And therefore it's necessary not only for the donations in general to be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, but every individual vessel and every individual part of the Mishkan that was built had to then be brought to Moshe, and he gave the account of this, and then each individual detail of the Mishkan will be everlasting. Masha'enkein, the big day kohuna, by contrast, when it comes to the garments for the Kohanim, is doch inyanem nit as the begodim zolem bleiben nitzchim l'deiris. We don't find anything about them that they have to be something that's everlasting for all generations. It's just a detail that's necessary for the Kohanim to have their status as the ones that serve in the Beis HaMikdash. Gefindt man nit bei sie, and therefore we don't find by them as nignezu zusammen mit den Oil Mayit Krashav Chulu, that they were hidden together with all the parts of the Mishkan itself. The minyan anitzchias. This idea of it being everlasting does not apply to the big day kohona, and therefore you do not need this account of the gold that includes what was done for the big day kohona. So this is the explanation regarding why in the gold that was used also for the big day kohona, there's no account given for this. Here the Rebbe comes to something more general regarding the meaning of Eile Pekudei Mishkan, based on what we see in Lekutei Torah in this week's parsha. So we can say that this point about this, that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving an account, as der minyan al pi Moshe had aufgetan dem Kesher zwischen dem Mishkan v'Kelov zu Moshe, that by Moshe Rabbeinu giving this account, it creates that connection specifically with the Mishkan and all of its Kelim to Moshe, and being the representative of all of Klal Yisrael, that through him it belongs to all of the Tzibur, is oich masim mit dem Pirish HaPnimi in Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, wie der Alter Rebbe is mevayer in the Chassidische Parsha from dem Vach in Lekutei Torah. In the deeper explanation that the Alter Rebbe gives for this pasuk, when it says Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, as explained in Lekutei Torah in the Chassidische Parsha. Zog dort, the Alter Rebbe there says, as the Pirish from Pekudei HaMishkan, Pukad al Pi Moshe, that another interpretation of the word Pekudei and Pukad, when it says that it was counted, it doesn't just mean counted, but it also is from Lashon Chayev Adam Lifkei des Ishtay, that one should be and come to be together with his wife before he goes out and away and he leaves her. And Val Hayichod Nikra Pekida, the union is referred to as a Pekida. So the term Pekudei here also means a union. As durch Pekudei HaMishkan, Pukad al Pi Moshe is geworden der Yichud from Vavke. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain that through Moshe Rabbeinu, with building the Mishkan, this creates the unity between the letters of Hashem's name, Vav K, which is a yichud of Zah und Malchus. The Vav represents the 6 midas of Hashem, and that's Zah. And the Hey, the second Hey of Hashem's name, is Malchus. Und danach, the yichud von Yud K. And then it creates a higher level of a unity between the 2 letters of the Yud and the first Hey of Hashem's name, that is all accomplished by the Pekudei Mishkan, Pekudei al pi Moshe. That's the deeper meaning of the terms Pekudei and Pukad. This also explains that what evolves from this is, as durch Pukad al pi Moshe is geworden a yichud zwischen dem Mishkan mit Moshe. That the counting or the calculations that Moshe Rabbeinu gives there is not just simply giving an account of exactly what was done with the materials of the Mishkan, but as explained before, this is in order to bring the ownership of everything of the Mishkan, that it's brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's connected specifically to Moshe that represents all of Klal Yisrael. As is geworden ein Zach mit Moshe Rabbeinu, Kanal Barucha, that everything that's brought does not belong to any individual, but it belongs all, and it's connected all, and it's one with Moshe Rabbeinu himself, representing all of Klal Yisrael. So therefore we can see how in the Pasuk, in the Pshat of the Pasuk, this evolves of the deeper meaning of the term Pekudei, Pukad, which doesn't just simply mean to give an account, but it means a level of a union. And that also means the same here regarding Pukad al pi Moshe, the point of what the account was all about. Okay, now based on this, the Rabbi will give us a deeper understanding of what's accomplished here by this Pekudei, by this account. The Pirish Anal in Pekudei, Meloshen Chai Vadam Lifka Desishtay. This explanation of the word Pekudei related to the expression of Chazal, Chai Vadam Lifka Desishtay, that speaks about a union, is nit kem bazundere Pirish from Pirish Apashet Meloshen Minyan V'cheshben. This is not a separate explanation that's not related to the simple meaning, that it means to simply give an account and a calculation. Nor is it totally zebazeh, but actually these 2 explanations are dependent one on the other. Wie sei hat sich aufgetan die Pekida und Yichud von Mishkan mit Moshe Rabbeinu. How was this Pekida, how was this union accomplished? Is das durech inyan aminyan. This union itself is through the account and the calculation that Moshe Rabbeinu gives of all the details of the Mishkan. What's the connection? What's the connection between these 2 things? Wenn man das verstehen will, so we'll understand this by first explaining, L'chayre sind die 2 Pirushim Anal in Pekudei, Minyan und Yichud. It would seem that the 2 explanations of what the word Pekudei means, whether to give an account or an idea of unity, Pirushim Hafchim, they actually seem to be 2 interpretations of the word Pekudei which are opposites. Minyan is the Darga Hachi Chitzaynes v'Tachtayne von der Sach. The idea of giving an account, giving a specific number of something, seems to be the lowest and most external level of the existence of something. It's not telling you anything about the content of what the thing itself is, it's just a number. V'oid, additionally, sie is madgish di hagbala von Sachen welchem erzählt. Loi pachas v'loi yoser. It's also highlighting the limitation of what it is that you're dealing with. That this is the number, not more, not less. By contrast, the concept of unity, union, here we're talking about the kind of union that there is between an ish and an isha, that we're talking about the absolute and ultimate unity. And therefore, over here, as far as the union that there is in the spiritual worlds, or in the yichud that there is in Hashem's name, the Vav K and the Yud K, we're talking about a very powerful level of unity that's beyond any limitation. In the yichud of a ish v'isha, this is the source. This union brings the revelation of a unlimited power of Hashem by the birth of a child that continues generations without an end. So we're talking here about 2 completely opposite things, seemingly. But since the 2 explanations of Pekudei are in the same word, it's verstandig, it's understood, wie gerät kam upon, as it was explained many times before, as in addition to this, that these are 2 opposite explanations, but nevertheless, and this is also the primary point here, that they are related and dependent one on the other. How could this be? So the explanation for this is, in dem besteht der Auftu vom Mishkan. This is actually the entire point and the entire accomplishment of the building of the Mishkan. Was man nennt dvarim mugbalim davke. You take materials that are very specific and limited, Und in dem Gvul is men mamshich dem bli Gvul. And it's in this entity, in this limited entity, we are going to bring in the unlimited revelation of Hashem. Bis ba'ifim fun v'shachanti, the full dwelling of Hashem here. And just like it was simply, früher hat man gebaut den Mishkan und danach hat sich aufgetan die Ashras Hashchina Mamayla. First, you build a Mishkan of all the physical materials, very specific and very limited with its size and its shape and everything, all the details, the way it had to be done. And then the Shechina will dwell. Ukvoid Hashem Maliyas Mishkan. The glory of Hashem fills the Mishkan. To the point, as it says in the end of this week's parsha, that the intensity of the revelation of godliness of the Shechina and the Mishkan is that Moshe Rabbeinu cannot at all enter. Und die zwei Havchim sind im Rumes in die zwei Pirushim in Pekudei. It's these two opposites that are hinted in the two interpretations of the word Pekudei. Pekudei Melashon Minyan, was Moshe Rabbeinu hat gezählt und gemacht am Cheshben von den Nidves HaMishkan, weist auf dem Gvul Shel Mishkan. The meaning of the word Pekudei, that Moshe Rabbeinu is taking into account, and he builds the Mishkan exactly the way it has to be done with all its details. That's the limited aspect of the existence of the physical Mishkan. Und Pekudei Melashon Pekida v'yichud. And then the deeper explanation that the Alter Rebbe says, that it means the union that's accomplished of the Hamshachas Habli Gvul in Gvul. This refers to the revelation of the unlimited revelation of Hashem that comes into the limited aspect of the existence of the Mishkan. So it's these two that come together are dependent one on the other. Now the Pnimi is the Pirish in the Tzvei Havchim Hanal. In Pekudei, a deeper level of understanding. These two opposites that you have in the word Pekudei is nit nor as a Mishkan zenegeven beida Havchim. It's not only that you have in the Mishkan these two opposite points. Gvul und bli Gvul, limited and unlimited. Noch mehr, but furthermore, as beide zene geworden ein Zach, these 2 points, the limited and the unlimited, become one and the same thing. Der Gvul Gufe von Mishkan is nicht bottle geworden von seiner Akbala. The limitation of the existence, of the details of the Mishkan was not nullified when the unlimited godly revelation came into it. Ubiyachadem zeh geworden ein Zach mit dem bli Gvul. But at the same time, the very limited existence becomes totally one with the unlimited revelation of Hashem that's in the Mishkan. So that's the chiddush over here, that they both coexist and they become completely one, without nullifying any aspect of one or the other. The Gvul, the limited and the unlimited, coexist together and become one entity. Und wie man gesehen, begoloi in the modern. This is something that was seen clearly regarding the place where the Aron was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the existence of the Aron itself was Aron is given Iker HaMishkan. This is the primary place of the dwelling of the Shechina, Menuchas HaShechina in the Mishkan. As Makim Aron Einem in Amida, as the Gemara tells us, the place of the Aron itself, the Aron that is, did not take up any space. That the Aron, which was the size of 1.5 amas by 2.5 amas, the Aron itself, when you measured in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you measured from one side that was 10 amas, you measured from the other side that was 10, and you had the size of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the Aron itself did not take up any space. What does this mean? Is the Pirish and them, the meaning of this that it says that the Aron itself did not take up any space, is nit nor as in the Mokim Aron. Given Gilu Shechina was einem in Amida. This doesn't just mean that in the place of the Aron there was a godly revelation that's unlimited. No, rather what this means is that Makim Ha'aron Gufe is given einem in Amida. The very Aron itself, which has a limited space, it was unlimited. Nachmer, furthermore, Dafke B'shas the Aron is given in Amidide, Ubechala Pratim, Eirech Reiche V'kaima. It's only when the Aron is built properly and it has the exact length, width, height that's necessary in order for it to be the holy Aron. Amasai v'chetzi Yarkei, v'ame v'chetzi Rachbei, v'ame v'chetzi Kaimasai. 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 in its height. Is a bevas achas given einem in Amida. It's this itself that causes that it should be an Aron, that there should be einem in Amida, that it will not be a Midah. So it's Midah. Its limitation is the cause of what's unlimited here. That's the degree of the union between the two, of the Gvul and the Bli Gvul. Der Oiftu for Mishkan is as their Gvul Gufe is Bli Gvul. That the very limited itself, the limited existence of the Aron is unlimited. That's the extent of the union of the two. Das ist die Shaykhis zwischen die zwei Pirushim in Pekudei. This is the connection of the two interpretations for the word Pekudei. Moshe Rabbeinu hat gemacht dem genoyim cheshbon von Nidbes HaMishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu makes the exact calculation of all donations to the Mishkan. Und der cheshbon gufe, was Moshe Rabbeinu hat gezählt, and this very calculation itself that Moshe Rabbeinu counts, hat aufgetan die Pekudei v'yichud. It's this limitation of the account that is what's the cause for the tremendous revelation and the union that's brought here in this place. The Hamshachas Hashchina or Kedusha, was is Hecha von Gvul, the drawing of bringing the presence of the Shchina and holiness that's above any limitation, ba'ifin shal yichud mit dem Gvul, that it should come and should be revealed, and with an absolute union together with limitation, kailol as der Gvul vert nitzchi, including that the very limited existence of the Mishkan becomes eternal, as explained before regarding the existence of the Mishkan.